morning, Delmarva and fans from across the country. Welcome to Coastal A&E. I'm your host, Michael Sprouse, and you are joining me in the House of Sprouse. We're going to take a jump into the creative side of the surf, broadcasting live on television and radio on Delaware 105.9 FM and TV Delmarva, Delmarva's newest and most exciting television network. And you can stream our program live right now at facebook.com/coastalae or on tvdelmarva.com. I want to give a shout out to our national sponsor, Barnstormers Wood. They offer the best reclaimed barnwood in North America, from showcase barnwood home construction, designer wood flooring, shelving, and much more. Check them out at barnstormerswood.com. And Harvey Hannon Associates and the Residences of Lighthouse Cove, Dewey Beach. Do you like the idea of luxury living? Well, that's exactly what you'll find at the Residences of Lighthouse Cove. More information at theresidencesde.com, and the Sprouse Thomason Group, where Coastal Leisure finds its home, an affiliate of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Gallo Realty. Check out the great opportunities available to you at isellthebeach.net. I have one very special guest this hour, but before I introduce him, I just want to give a quick note that if for some reason we have any connectivity issues during this live broadcast, my guest will be calling in, and we'll finish the interview over the phone. Knock on wood, that's not going to happen. We're all going to be great. Speaking of telephones, for your questions and comments, you can call the Coastal A&E hotline at 302-335-6200. I know we already have callers on the line, and one of the reasons is because of my incredible guest this morning, Elliott Landy. Elliott Landy is an acclaimed photographer. He was the official photographer of Woodstock. You have seen his work grace famous album covers, magazine covers. He documented, I like to say he was the man behind the lens of the history of American rock and roll in the 60s and 70s. Welcome to Coastal A&E, my friend. Welcome, Elliott. How are you? Thanks for joining me today.
After an introduction like that, I am just fantastically feeling great. Thank you.
Well deserved. Well deserved. I'm thrilled to have made your acquaintance several months ago. We've had several conversations. I'm always just enamored with your work, with your creative spark and your flow and the energy work you do. You're really what I consider to be a renaissance man. And I think anyone that has recognized any of the albums that you've worked on, they know your work immediately. We have a lot of fans that are going to be calling in this hour, I'm sure of it. In fact, I know there's a caller on the whole, but before we get to that, I guess one of the best places would to be very quickly in a nutshell, how did you get started on this path? When you look back over your incredible career, how did it all begin for you?
Wow. Well, it began in college when I didn't find anything I really wanted to do in life, and I figured I'd get a job for 6 months after college and then travel. And after 6 months, I was no closer to traveling than I was before, and I realized I had to do something I loved to do in life, that just getting a job wasn't going to cut it for me personally. So at that point, I liked to do two things. I like to go out with girls, and I like to take pictures. So I decided that the better choice to earn a living is to make pictures. I began photographing really from a love of photography. It was because I really loved it. It was really just a choice of what should I make money from. But as far as taking pictures, I had no choice. I was compelled to do it the moment I thought about doing it. It was my thing, so to speak. It actually happened very magically when I was 13 years old in a summer camp. I had no interest in photography whatsoever. That summer, I was what's called a counselor in training, which means that I was an assistant. So 1 week I did boating, and 1 week I did tennis, and 1 week I did macrame, and 1 week was darkroom. And the moment I walked in that darkroom, I was just completely smitten with it. I had no cameras, was not interested in taking pictures, but I loved being in that darkroom. And I became the summer-long assistant for the darkroom, and I mixed the chemistry in these brown bottles and red lights and yellow lights in the room and making contact prints for people, and I just loved it. So when I got into the following fall, I was entering high school, which is the Bronx High School of Science, and I wanted to join the camera club. So I went to the camera club to sign up, and on the paper it said list the names of the lenses and cameras that you have. Plural cameras, all plural, right? And I didn't even own a Brownie, and had no idea. And so I thought, oh my God, this is much too advanced for me. And I kind of snuck out the back. I was very obviously insecure and uncertain of myself, and I snuck out the back thinking, it was too advanced for me. And I didn't pick up a camera again until I graduated from college.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
I didn't realize
yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
It was so long, yeah.
So when you came across the camera after you graduated from college, did all those memories come flooding back? Did you see this as some type of wonderful magic that you wanted to rediscover? Because there was a lot going on at that time, I would imagine, in the 60s when you graduated from college.
No, it was just a magical love. It's like you like a certain flavor of ice cream or something, or you vibrate with a certain human being that you meet, or you like a color or a place to live and so on. For me, the darkroom was that. It was like part of me already, but it wasn't. I had no inspiration to take pictures. I don't know why. I can't explain the why of it. I can only explain the isness of it. So after college, I remember I was walking in the street one day on Broadway and 71st Street, and I saw something really beautiful on a building. It was the architecture of the corner of a building, which is not what I photograph at all. And I thought, I wanted to show that to somebody. I wanted to say, hey, look at this. And I looked around me thinking I would find someone I knew on the street in New York, and I didn't, And I thought, well, I should get a camera. And that was the inspiration, just that simple moment, so I could share something that I thought was beautiful with people easily.
Well, I think it's really fascinating that you went from really a novice initially to the legendary status that you achieve now. But how, at that time period, when you really got your first camera after college, did it segue into you began documenting photographs? If people go to your website, you can read your bio, what was going on culturally at the time with the anti-war movement, and then eventually into the rock and roll icons.
Yeah, when I decided I wanted to do photography, I took one very basic course in the Camera Club of New York, just fixer, developer, and stop bath. The same stuff I had done when I was 13, but I didn't really remember it. And after that, I bought a camera, a small Nikon at the time, and within a week I needed a better camera. It didn't do something I needed it to do, so I upgraded to a Nikon right away, actually. And I was going out to Fire Island on weekends to work out there, and I was taking pictures on the boat. But this must have been around 1965 or so. I took pictures of actors to begin with, and then just by chance, my girlfriend was a publicist in the film business, and one day she said to me, Harriet Anderson is in New York City making a Danish film. Harriet Anderson was one of Ingmar Bergman's first stars, first muses. Actually, she was in his early films. And so she said, I can get you on the set, and maybe you could tell a story somewhere. So I went down, and they were shooting on the Brooklyn Bridge, and I went down, and I fell in love, and they fell in love. It was like really a beautiful blending of this. I would get there at 9 in the morning and leave at 6 and go home and process the film and so on. And I got along so beautifully with these people. They were really the first Europeans that I knew well, let's say. And there's a different temperament there. There was a calmness, especially Danish people. There was a calmness there. So they asked me to come to Denmark and be the official photographer for the film on the set.
Wow.
So that was my first job, really, in photography, like that. And since Harriet Anderson was so famous, I published stories on major magazines in Denmark and Sweden, covers and centerfold, center stories, and so on. And then in Denmark, in Copenhagen, I had a chance to stay there and do some other stuff. But the war was happening. This was 1967 now, late 1967. And I felt I had I wanted to, not had a responsibility to, I wanted to do something to help stop the Vietnam War. So I decided I would go back to the States. My first thought was, well, I'll go to Vietnam, I'll take pictures, and I'll show how terrible war is. And my second thought is, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be shot at. I don't want to be in danger. I was really scared of going there, and one should be scared of these things. It's rational to be scared of these things.
Sure, yeah.
I thought, well, I'll take pictures of the anti-war demonstrations that are going on, because there's so many demonstrations going on that the newspapers don't even cover. So I began working with underground newspapers. One was called the West Side News and Free Press, and the other was called the Rat Subterranean News. and they had police press passes, so I could go to the demonstrations and take pictures, and then they would publish. Basically, I would give them the photograph that they wanted to publish, and I became photo editor of the Rat, which is the Rat Subterranean News, meaning underground news, meaning the truthful news, not the news that the major media put out, which is very censored. One evening when I was finished working on the edition of the Rat, I was walking along 2nd Avenue with two friends at night, and I see a marquee on the Anderson Theater that said Country Joe and the Fish Light Show. And neither I nor my friends had any idea what that was, right? So I go over to the box office, and I hear this incredible loud music coming out of the theater, right? And I showed her my press pass. I'm going like this. You can't see me and think. I showed her my press pass. I'll go back a little bit. There you go. Hands are important, right? I showed her my press pass, and she let me in the theater. And I walked in the theater, and there was this incredible light show, like filling the whole stage, and all different colors and changing all the time, but resonating, vibrating with the music. It wasn't like just random lights. It looked like they belonged, they were made with each other, made for each other. So I wanted to get closer to the stage, so I just took out my camera. I didn't really particularly want to take pictures of it at that moment, actually. I was just engaged with it visually. So I went up close, and I took my first really rock and roll concert pictures, which was Country Joe and the Fish.
That's great. And of course, they ended up at Woodstock, I believe, years later.
I didn't photograph him at Woodstock, though. Yes, but he did end up at Woodstock. He was one of the main people in those years. He was one of the main protest musicians. He was really great, actually.
Sure.
A very important person.
I definitely want to continue this line of questioning, but I know that we have a caller that's being very patient. Let's see if we can go ahead, if that caller's still there, and take a question real fast.
Okay.
Do we have the caller on the air?
Hello?
Hey, good morning. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Coastal Lanie.
Well, thank you.
Yes, who's on the line?
I'm sorry?
My name is Gary Michaels, a dear old friend of Elliott.
Yes, hi, Gary. We went to college, and before that, we grew up together on the streets of the Bronx.
That's right. Elliott, you're looking great. How are you and Linda doing in the pandemic?
We're actually, it's really fine because we stayed isolated from the beginning. I knew what the situation was. I knew the only way for, to survive it comfortably is to stay isolated. So that's what we've done. And we're
great. You used your Bronx brain.
What?
Elliott, you mentioned something. I said you've used your Bronx brain.
Oh, my Bronx brain's right.
Elliott, you mentioned something about working in the dark room and contact prints, and I know that you were about to launch a new band book about contact. What's the progress of that?
What happened was that I did a Kickstarter for it, and about 1/3 of the way through, the economic situation crashed, and so did the contributions to the book. And a couple of people withdrew their contributions and so on. So there was just no. I also, I kind of let it go, but I didn't do any promotion or publicity for it. I kind of let it drag itself out. So the book is postponed, basically. I should say,
all right,
I did my first book of band photographs that I did in maybe 5 years ago now, which is this one, right? Is something that Gary helped me with. I know Gary since the Bronx, since we're kids, but he's a printing expert. So Gary was my consultant in creating this great book, and my helper too.
All right, that is beautiful. Hey, do you have another question for Elliott?
Well, no questions. Just wishing Elliott well, and thank you for having him on.
Gary, yeah, man, it's so nice you called. That's really beautiful.
Thanks for calling, Gary. Appreciate it.
All right. Love to Linda and you and the kids. Bye.
Certainly, Gary. So,
I love that. I love it. You got your childhood friends calling up and just talking to you. That's great. That's really phenomenal.
That's a long time. He's a special guy. He's an artist also. Gary Michaels, his name is. You want to look it up.
Right. Oh, we have another call. We got time for another call. Let's take the other call on the line. Good morning. You're on Coastal Lanie.
Hi. You and the kids. Bye.
Good morning.
Good morning. Who is this, please?
The name is Ephraim Almond. I actually know Elliott, bought some pictures from him, and we went out to dinner up in Woodstock, and I had a question I wanted to ask him.
Sure.
You want to hear the question?
Yes.
I could guess at it.
Yeah, go ahead with your question, please.
My question's going to be, I want to know what building he was looking at that he wanted to take a picture of in the city to show everybody. Because he talked.
Oh, that's a good question.
Earlier.
Did you hear the question?
I think he said, "What did I want to take a picture of that?"
No, he wanted the building that mesmerized you.
What's the name of the building?
Ansonia.
Is this Elliott? Is Elliott on? Can he hear me?
Yes, it's me. It was the Ansonia building, and it really wasn't such a special thing. It was just something nice that I saw. I don't ever think I went back and took it. It's not something that motivates me very much, architectural photography. It was just a beautiful moment that I was experiencing. And actually, that's the reason I take pictures. Anything I've taken in my life practically, except for the few commercial jobs I've done, have been because there was something I wanted to show somebody. There's something I thought was beautiful, something that I was feeling great to be part of or to look at, and that's my inspiration for taking a picture. And in the beginning years after I became somewhat successful as a music photographer, I started to do some jobs, some commercial jobs. And by commercial job, I mean just assignments and so on. And so some were musicians and some were good. Like I got to photograph John Lee Hooker like that, and Albert Eiler, and Ornette Coleman. Really did some beautiful pictures in that way. But then I got some other kind of jobs that I had no relationship to at all. And I remember the thing that stopped me from really pursuing commercial photography was I was taking a picture one time on an assignment of some sort, and I was thinking, while I was taking the picture, I was thinking about what the art director wanted. And rather than feeling what I wanted to do and letting it flow naturally, it was being my connection to my creative vision, my creative instinct, my creative feelings, or let's say my connection to my essence, which is where I believe art comes from, was interrupted. And that's painful to me. That was painful to me. So that was one moment, and then another moment, a parallel thing. I remember also one time taking a picture and thinking of how I was going to sell the picture as I was taking it. And that also was that same kind of interruption. And those two moments, I'm sure there were more, but those two moments really stopped me from wanting to pursue commercial photography or even to get assignments. I really decided I wanted to film what I wanted to film, what I wanted to photograph. And so that's what I pursued my whole life since then, actually.
Very interesting.
Even the rock and roll pictures were like that. I did those music photographs because I loved what I was seeing. And I wasn't being paid by anybody to do it. I loved what I was seeing. And when I was going to the Fillmore East and photographing Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and so on, it was really a way, for me, it was proselytizing against the war in Vietnam. It was saying to people, come down, be part of this alternative culture. People shared joints there. This is a new way of thinking. We don't have to think and feel the way we've been brought up to think and feel, which creates war, creates the chaos that we have now, there are better ways of thinking that are embodied in many of the spiritual practices. I'm not saying religious practices. I mean, the essence of all these spiritual practices is peace and love, let's say. So that's what I was doing with my rock and roll pictures. I was never, in my book Woodstock Vision, I say I was never a fan, meaning I wasn't down there because it was, quote, Jimi Hendrix, because it was Janis Joplin. It was really, I was a fan of the culture and the lifestyle that they represented. And I was sharing this, hoping to bring people into this space, mind space.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I definitely want to follow up on a question, but I want to see if the caller is still on the line. Caller, are you still there? No, I guess, okay. Well, thank you for calling. And we have a few more minutes before we go to our break. I'm sure we'll get some more callers, but you bring up something that I'm really curious about. When you were photographing these icons, and you said you weren't there as a fan, which is totally understandable, what was that relationship like as photographer and subject? And they're performing, and people in the audience, of course, are going to be caught up in their performance and the cult of the celebrity, because they're seeing Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, other just superstar rock and roll musicians. What was it like for you to see that through your camera? What was happening in your mind as a creative visionary at the time?
Wow. Oh, that's one thing. When I photograph, I shut my mind off in a way, or very often I'll be taking pictures. I'll be taking pictures and even speaking with the person I'm photographing, and not remember what I said practically.
Wow.
So yeah.
I mean,
Now that happens. Yeah.
We got about 3 minutes where we take our first break, but we have one more caller. Might be able to get them in very quickly. Good morning. You're on Coastal A&E.
Okay.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is David and Nancy from Woodstock. Hi, Elliott.
Hi, David and Nancy.
Hi, Elliott.
Oh, David and Nancy. Hi, yes. Okay, no, my good friends.
Plan what your next projects are?
I'm sorry?
Do you plan your next project, like after you're doing stuff with the band? Do you have a project in mind, and what is it?
You mean at that time in my life?
Well, like now, when you're done with the present project, do you plan like what you'll do next, or do you just let it come to you organically?
Actually, the band book is put on hold, in fact. And yeah, I have about 4 projects I'm working on. One is an interactive music video software application I've been working on for like many years, trying to get it done for 50 years. And it actually happened for like 6 or 7 years I've been working on the programming, and it's functional now. 2 is a book I call Love at 60, which is, oops.
Yeah.
Love at 60, which is photographs of my wife and text that she's written. She's written very beautiful poetic prose, I call it, for that. And 3 is, God. Oh, right. It's a spiritual metaphysical book that I call Sharing Stillness, because I do this, I call it subtle energy work, which basically helps people to get in touch with the essence of life and relax, and also produces physical healing sometimes. And so I call it at sharingstillness.com if you're interested. So that's the 3rd project. And
that's beautiful. We got about 60 seconds left before we go to our first break. I definitely want to talk more about that.
Maybe they want to say something else. So
I think they want to give me a quick shout to see. Are you guys still there?
Yes, you didn't mention your flowers, Elliott. The flowers is a project behind you now.
Now you know why Nancy's my friend. Here's one of them.
30 seconds. That is beautiful, Elliott.
Here's one of them.
All right, folks, listen, don't go anywhere. We will be right back on Coastal A&E. We have more Elliott Landy and beautiful photographs and fascinating stories. Please don't go anywhere, folks. I'm here with Michael Sprouse. We'll be right back. Coastal A&E, I'm your host, Michael Sprouse. I want to take a quick minute to thank some of our sponsors. Inspections Guaranteed, an authorized dealer of the On Guard system. Go from home inspection to home production. More at inspectionsguaranteed.com. And The Closet Works, the only closet company on Delmarva, offering the exclusive curved hanging system. It's your life, just well organized. More at theclosetworks.net. And The Lodge at Trode Homestead, Delaware's premier luxury retirement community. Life your way. More at vpretirement.com. I'm back with my friend Elliott Landy. He's been busy rearranging photographs during our break here. He's got such a great body of work. I wish I had more than an hour. I will definitely have you back on the air because the phones light up. People, you have such great energy, and I know that you do spirit work yourself. You've been putting some beautiful photographs and some flowers up behind you. What do we have going on right now in this line of work with the flowers? They're beautiful.
Gosh, they're waiting their turn to go out there, actually. I had my first show with them. I've had some small shows with it, but we had a show scheduled in Scranton, Pennsylvania for the beginning of June, but that's been, I don't know if they're going to have it or not, because they stopped social distancing in there. So they may have it, and that would be the beginning of June. But I would have to go through a bunch of them to show you. But you can look at my website, elliottlandy.com, and go for Flower Visions. I call them Flower Visions.
I am glad you called out your website, because there's so much on your website, such rich, beautiful, robust work, and that's Elliott ElliottLandy.com, ELLIOTTLANDY.com. You can see work going back decades, incredible work. We have been getting some comments, of course, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/coastalae. As you know, Gwen Hawley says, tell them your Jimi Hendrix story. So I'm not quite sure what that means, Elliott, but that is a beautiful photograph you're holding up right now.
It's impressionistic. It's not a straight rendition of a sunflower.
I'm just going to talk about the flower for a minute. So I didn't set out to take impressionistic photographs of flowers. I was in Arles in the south of France. I have a great photography festival there. And I was there one summer, and I had just bought these optical filters. And I was driving around, and I passed this field of sunflowers. And I thought, well, I'll try these filters on and see how it works. It was just playing around with something, and just by chance, as is most things in my life, I saw what I was getting. It was like these phenomenal, I think they're incredibly beautiful photographs. They're not done to imitate what the impressionist painters did. They're more like just in the spirit of it. I was in the same place. I was in the south of France. It really captures the feeling of for me what plants and flowers and beauty is about, which is a soft, nebulous feeling. It's not hard and sharp. It's very feminine vibration. So
that's beautiful.
The technology, the technique for creating these things was just an accident in a way that I discovered. So the Jimi Hendrix story is that I was at the Fillmore East, and I think Sly and the Family Stone was on. There was another act before. I believe it was Sly. I'm not sure. And I was real tired, smoking grass probably, which tires me out physically. So I never really did a whole lot of it in my life, I'm sorry to say. And I had the cameras I was using were like cast iron lenses. I had this special lenses that I got from East Germany. They were used lenses from East Germany, but they were faster, meaning that they needed less light to take pictures in. And they didn't exist for Nikon at that point yet. It was like for photographers, it was 180 millimeter f2.8 lens and a 300 millimeter f4 lens, but they were cast iron lenses, really. So I was very tired carrying these cameras around, and 4 cameras and lenses and so on. Anyway, so I knew Hendrix was coming on, then there was a long break, and I said, oh, I'll get him another time. And I packed up my cameras, and I started to walk out, and I headed to the back of the theater, and I was walking. I had my hands on the exit bar, actually, to leave the theater. It was an old movie theater, and then Hendrix played his first note, just like that. And I stopped, and I turned around, and I listened for a while, and of course, I was magnetically drawn to it. So I stood in the back of the theater for a few minutes and took some pictures from the back of the theater, and then I went up front and photographed him. And that was really the only time that I got to photograph him, was really that.
Really? Wow.
In performance. I had photographed him previously when he returned to the United States. He became famous. He's an American, and he became famous in England and flew back to the United States as a superstar musician. He was known already. And he had a press conference at the top of the Pan American building. And so a friend of mine, a journalist named Al Aronowitz, he was a great writer, a great rock and music journalist, was interviewing him, and I sat next to Al, and I was taking pictures of Jimmy while Al was interviewing him. And Jimmy was just the softest man. He was so gentle. You wouldn't think it from just if you listen to his music. He's like,
sure.
Soft, smiley, nice man, obviously very intuitive, very smart, really saw what was happening in everything, I thought, like that. So I photographed him those 2 times, really, and that's the Jimmy story.
That's great. So good thing that your timing was perfect, because you could have walked out that had a whole different end of that story. I want to remind our listeners, 302-335-6200 for questions for Elliott Landy. Phenomenal, exciting photographer. Your career is just brilliant. There's so much to talk about, and we have really not a whole lot of time, unfortunately. So we'll definitely have you back on the air. Of course, your Woodstock experience is tremendous. Every time I hear these wonderful stories. In fact, I love the story of how you actually just sort of ended up being the quote official photographer for Woodstock. Was again just sort of just a fluke, I guess. You have to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, I was doing the right things in the right place, I guess, at that point, because I had become known for my photographs of the band on Music from Big Pink, and also the second band album. And I think the band album was out before that. And then the Bob Dylan Nashville Skyline photograph, which is kind of behind me there, this one.
Beautiful photograph, famous photograph, without a doubt. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
I was living in Woodstock. I had moved there from Manhattan, and I met Mike Lang just casually. Mike was one of the producers of the Woodstock Festival, and I knew him from around town. I had no idea what he did, really. We never talked about business. He was a friend of a friend of mine. And one day he called up and he said, I want to talk to you for a minute. Can I come over or something like that? And I said, yeah. And he rode over to my house on his motorcycle and came up and we chatted and we just had a very comfortable relationship. And he said to me, I'm producing a music concert. Do you want to photograph it? And I said to him, who's playing? And he told me some names. I forget which names, but anyone he mentioned was famous for sure, like that. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And he said, okay, great, I'll call you, like that. And then he drove off on his motorcycle. And as I write in my book, as I say, it wasn't even a handshake. In those days, you just did things. Like they said, I'm doing a concert, you want to photograph it? I made sure that it was at least something, I guess who was playing. I said, yeah. He said, yeah. And that was it. So that's how I photographed it really for him and for the producers of the concert. And then 2004, 2006 maybe, I was doing an exhibition for the New York State Museum on Woodstock. It was an anniversary Woodstock thing. And I said the publicist said, well, you got to tell us something about yourself and whatever. And I said I was the official photographer. I realized that I would, these days, would call myself, would be called the official photographer. I had full access. I was working for the promoters and so on. So I said to her, I'm the official, I was the official photographer of Woodstock. And being a New York State employee, she said, oh, you have to verify that, I said, well, okay, I was, but so I had to write to Mike, and then Mike wrote back, yes, he was, and so on. So that's why I say official photographer. But the reason I'm going through all this is in the 60s, there was really no official. It was like everything was casual. It's like the hog farm. They weren't the official police there. They just did it. And the people just did it.
I think we have a caller on hold. That's a phenomenal story. One of my favorites.
I just want to kind of dampen down the official thing, but really I was the main photographer, or one of the main photographers of Woodstock.
Excellent. Do we have a caller on the line? Good morning. You're on Coastal Lanie.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Do you have a question for Elliott?
Yeah. My name is Ben Silverstein. I'm in upstate New York. If you remember, I was a guy whose book of yours wound up in the snowbank. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you.
I didn't hear the part before snowbank. Sorry.
Oh,
you were the guy. What?
One of your books wound up in a snowbank when it got shipped.
I'm not sure something about a book ending up in a snowbank.
Okay. Hi.
Yeah.
What is your question for Elliott?
I wanted to ask if you were going to try the crowdfunding again for the other band book, because I think the contact sheet idea is brilliant.
Thank you. The name was my wife's name. I was planning to do a second book of my band photographs because there's much more than was in the first one, much more that really deserves to be published. And I was in my studio and I had the prints all around and the contact sheets around on the table, and I was just looking and figuring out what I wanted to do. And she walked in and she started looking at the contact sheets, and she said, why don't you do a book of just contact sheets? And you could call it Contacting the Band. She's very brilliant with words, actually. At first I thought, well, I really like the pictures, because I take photographs to share the essence, the beauty of things. And a book of contact sheets is really a book about the situation. It's more of a journal. It's more of a reportage of what's happening. And so that's not the thing that's closest to my heart. I do something and then I go on to the next thing that I do. And I'm not really so interested in the story of it. I mean, the story is interesting, but for me, it's the picture to start with. But and then I started looking at these contact sheets and really got fascinated with them, because even though I was there, it's 50 years now, and I find them really, really interesting. I was fascinated by it, so I decided I would do that book. And am I going to do it again? I've had outreach from a publisher that may be interested in doing it. And when I got into the logistics of doing the second band book, now at this time in my life and so on, I'm not sure that I want to take on being the publisher again. even though I made a good amount of money from the first one. So if I get the proper publishing deal, I'd rather let a publisher handle that, as long as I have total control. I urge everyone to get copies of this book. There's about 100 of them left, and I supervise the printing of this page by page with the printer, and it's really a beautiful book. It's really, I'll use the word my masterwork. I don't mean that I'm a master, I mean, but the reproduction of the photographs is masterful. I made sure everyone was done almost perfectly. I'm happy. I don't complain about any of them. And there's only 100, and I don't think it's ever going to be published as well as that, ever going to be printed as well as that first edition was.
Well, that is definitely a beautiful book, and one of the things, we could spend 2 hours talking about the special relationship that you had with the members of the band when you were photographing them for the time period that you did. Yeah. And that book is full of these incredible photographs. One of the elements that we spoke about in the past when you and I have conversed, there is a beautiful spiritual quality to your work that I see in every one of the photographs of yours that I see, whether they were photographs from Woodstock, photographs of Bob Dylan, photographs of the band, Joan Baez, on and on and on. You have a beautiful series of Bob Dylan from being physically in Woodstock with one afternoon with his wife and kids, hanging out in an old farmhouse. They're just beautiful, poetic photographs. So without a doubt, and just by the nature of the calls that we're getting in, people that have met you, in the past, or that are so touched by your work, that must be very satisfying to you, just as a creator, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, I've been getting letters recently that tell me how much my pictures have meant to people, and I'm now starting to collect them. And I will put some on my website. And of course, it's very meaningful to me. My goal in taking photographs was to share something I felt was beautiful with people. And what happens when you see something beautiful? You feel good from it. That's the whole point of it. So when people write to me how important and how good my photographs make them feel, I guess that's mission accomplished. Oh no, that's a stupid term, mission accomplished. I've been watching too much TV during this pandemic thing, right? I won't say that. So I guess the reason that I took photographs is being borne out, is being rewarded. Let's say I like it. Every one of us wants to make the person we talk to feel good. I think whenever we have a conversation, that's it. Even if it's to sell somebody something, even if it's just for a selfish reason, you still want to make them feel good. So for me, photography is a conversation that I can have, which will last way beyond me personally.
Right on. I know we have 2 callers on hold. Let's see if I can get one on the air very quickly. Good morning. You're on Coastal Lanie.
Hi, how are you? This is Tommy Moore from Long Island. I actually am a friend of Elliott's, and I'm really calling to just let Elliott know how much I support him, me and Janine. And I also want to let the people know that not only is he one of the most incredible photographers in the world, bar none of them, he is such a great human being and a spiritual person that he's just an amazing guy. I've got to spend a lot of time with him and his wife Linda, and we were just recently up visiting with him in Woodstock, and I still, Elliott, just so you know, your spirit is still with me. What we went through in the studio that day. I mean,
yeah,
you are just a very special person on this planet, and I think that outside of photography, which bar none, you are one of the best in the world. But I also want the world to know what a great human being you are, and what a caring, spiritual person you are. And your work speaks for itself. And I hope that we get to see you this summer sometime.
From a distance.
Those were lovely words.
Next summer, up close.
Thank you so much.
No, wait. Actually, something I want to say. I'd love to see you up close next summer, it sounds like. It feels like at this point that's when it's going to be said.
No, we may have another caller on the line.
Yeah, you know what? There's a little story I want to tell, because the word spiritual, I mean, I traveled in Europe for 7 years. I left the United States in 1971, I think late 71, and with $22 in my pocket, right? That's it. And with my wife, a year-old baby, and a dog, and I thought I'd get a contract to do video records. I went to the first video cassette festival. Anyway, and I didn't, and we had no money. We were hitchhiking and driving around, and one thing, that's a long, long story. But the point I want to say is that I was in Greece one time, and we had this old 40-passenger bus that we lived in at the time, and we were traveling in it, and it was always breaking down, one thing or another. And I stopped in a Greece gas station, right, in a fix-it station, and the guy went really way out of his way to help us. And after he did it, I was so effusive. I said, "Oh, thank you so much. It's so beautiful of you." And he looks at me, he says, "It's normal," just like that. It's normal. And I always remember that. So when people say something is spiritual and this and that, that's what normal is, right? All this other stuff is a digression from normalcy, in my opinion.
That's beautiful, beautiful. I love that element of your work, Elliott, and I wish we had more time so we could talk more about the spiritual work that you do. I know it's important, and it comes through in your work, which I think is quite obvious. I will definitely have you on again to reference that, because it's obviously touched many people. In the short amount of time that we have, we are obviously living in some pretty chaotic times right now. So could you address, as the artist in you and the photographer, the visionary, what people could do maybe to help find some healing themselves?
In the spiritual work I do, and I call it subtle energy work. I use the word subtle rather than spiritual, because spiritual makes it different than other things, makes it better than it has a certain kind of a built-in credibility which things shouldn't have. You should judge everything on its own as you experience them. What I suggest is that it's a form of meditation, but it's meditation without any connection to any other thought form. Meaning, lie down on a rug, on a soft rug, not in bed, because bed has sleep vibrations. And I lie down on my back and I kind of stretch my arms out and I make sure no one's going to disturb me. Make sure all your electronic devices are away from your body, because they do weaken your body. And close your eyes and simply take like 1 or 2 deep breaths and try not to think about anything. And try not thinking about something. Not thinking about something is very difficult to do. So you won't succeed right away. Maybe you'll never succeed. But just the trying of not to think about anything puts you in this state of meditation. And I do it for like 12 minutes at a time. I have a timer called Timer Plus on the Mac, on the iOS system, because it doesn't give me a shrill ring. It's just going to be a bamboo bing, a very quiet sound that tells me I put my 12 minutes in, so to speak. And after that, I can stay longer, so I don't have to shut it off. It shuts itself off, which is important. So you lie down on a rug, make sure no one's going to disturb you, and simply don't think about anything. It's the easiest way to get furthest out in a way. It's very, very, and it's very, very powerful, because then things happen to you. If you look at my website, sharingstillness.com, there's information about it there. But what happens is, see, I started doing this, I started practicing it, I learned about it, it's another story. I started practicing it when I was single, after I separated from my wife. I was in New York City, I was going out with some women once in a while, or money was upsetting me, and whenever I was upset, I would lie down and just do this practice. I would get up, and the emotional power of it was gone. The situation was still there, but the emotion, the feeling, the sadness was gone. So this is really a way to relieve anxiety and stress and really get to your essence, because our essences don't think. The mind is something, thought forms that we have come after as we grow up, as we learn about life. The essence of life is when you hold a newborn baby or a pet, even, you feel this wonderful.
Elliott, we got 30 seconds. We're going off the air. Gosh, I hate to interrupt you. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, my friend, for being my guest. Thank you, everyone, for listening and calling in. I'll be back in a few more minutes with Chef Gigi. Be safe out there, everybody. Stay well. I have Nicola Denado next Saturday here on Coastal A&E. I'm your host, Michael Sprouse. Much love, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.